All right, guys, welcome to On Point. You're about to watch the largest, most extensive broadhead test ever performed. Over 45 different broadheads were put to the test in areas such as sharpness and edge retention, spinning, overall consistency, penetration, accuracy, and durability. All with one goal in mind: to help you choose what broadhead to use this year. Hey guys, Garrett from On Point here. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button before you start watching the video, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future content that we upload. This is just one video. We have over 100 on YouTube now, helping people learn about archery and bow hunting, and we'd love to have you be a part of the channel. I'm going to help you guys navigate your way through this video here, helping you guys understand what you're looking at, what you see, and the charts that we produce with all the data, and kind of explain why we did what we did during the test. So this was a collaboration episode with the Born and Raised guys. They were nice enough to let me be a part of it, and very excited to show you guys what we have in store for you. So let's get into this. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and break this thing down.
Kudu 125s.
25-6.
Okay.
Number 2, 25-4. 25-4.
Northern Evo.
Okay, so we're going to get started here, and basically what you're going to start seeing is these guys weighing broadheads. You got Trent opening a thing of kudus here, and then they're weighing them. And they're basically, what they're doing here is they're getting a average. So there's one score for being closest to 125 with your average, and then there's another score for having the tightest tolerance. A lot of guys were wanting to have a percentage, calculated percentage for tolerance, but tomato, you can get just the tolerance and you can do the math yourself. But taking a look at the chart here, there's some really cool things that we saw. So Cheap Shot is kind of like an off-brand, very cheap broadhead. They're plastic, and so they weighed an average of exactly 125, so they came in first on the average weight test, but then they came in 7th on the variance test. So the ones that I want to point out are the Day 6, which came in 2nd on the weight ranking, which is fantastic. They came in at 125.1333 on average, and then the variance between all the heads was 0.2. And so the Helix actually won the variance ranking with 0. So they were all exactly 125.2, 125.2, 125.2 for 0 variance, and pretty cool stuff. So Day 6 and Strickland Helix, going out of the test after the weight test was performed, are actually tied for first. Some other really popular high-end stuff that we tested here was the Valkyrie, and they came in the weight ranking. They didn't fare out so well. They were 3rd worst tested for weight ranking. They averaged 100. They averaged 3 grains off of basically the 150, because these are one of the 150s that we weighed, and then they came in 7th place for variance. So kind of middle of the road for variance, actually a little bit better than the average for variance, but kind of fell short because they averaged 3 grains over, exactly 3 grains over 150. Another one is that you're going to see me talking about will be the Annihilators. And those ones are a cast, and those are going to be easier to have a tighter tolerance due to the manufacturing process. So they actually did pretty darn good in the variance ranking. They came in, they came in 6th place or 5th place, and they came pretty far behind in basically 9th worst out of the variance. But they had really good variance, but they all averaged 126.4, taking all 3 of them, which is 1.4 grains over 125. So, none of these are actually that bad. It's just that stiff of a competition, and that everything is that close for tolerance. So if I was actually going to make a decision based off of that, that wouldn't really be a big factor for me, because they're all so close to being to 125 or to 150. So moving on from there, is the edge sharpness test, where we take the broadheads out of the box, and then I'll let Cody explain that part. And then we have the plunge test, where we plunge the broadheads in through paper, and we get the amount of weight that it took to get the broadhead to poke all the way through to the back of the ferrule. So here we go.
Yeah, so we're talking about consistency. We did weight tests, had some interesting findings there. Now, one thing that really matters, the broadhead sharpness. So we've got a little tool here that the knife manufacturers use that tests the ability of the sharpness. So we're gonna do 2 different tests. We're gonna do pressure test. It's gonna break this right here, and then we're also gonna do a plunge test for penetration as well on a paper. So
Show them a clip real quick.
yeah. So you guys can go buy this. It's on the internet. Edge on Up, and it's a scale, and it's basically gonna it measures the force that it takes to cut through, and it's got this little, everything's consistent, same thing. Pretty much eliminating any variables there.
So we're going right back through the blades again, and first up is Dirt Nap. Dirt Nap.
All right, so now we're moving on into the plunge and pressure test that Cody just
Cheap
explained.
shot.
And what
Cheap
you see
shot.
here
Go
is
for
you're going to start
cheapy.
seeing the some
don't break
broadhead
the
designs
machine. Don't
take
break the
effect
machine.
here. And then you're also going to see
Oh,
the materials
600.
used. And
Hey,
so
testing.
I'll bring up the
Oscut,
cheap shots here, which
three-blade.
performed really well in the weight ranking. But you start actually testing the materials used on some of these heads where you're trying to cut and maybe save money, where they're like literally $1 a piece for the heads. You're going to start seeing that this one fell on last place on the plunge score, and the edge on them they just weren't sharp. And you'll see that this head begins to fall farther and farther behind the more we test the actual performance of the head. But let's bring out some winners of this test. So the Valkyrie did really well in the plunge score. They got first place, and they got they got 11th place in the pressure test score. The Van Diemen's got second place in the plunge test, and the G5 Montex got third in the plunge test. However, they got second to last in the pressure test. So kind of a really big variance there. You're testing different areas of the edge, and then you're kind of testing the design for actual breach into the skin. I think if we used a little bit thicker material, we would have had a bigger difference there, especially with the mechanicals. None of them actually deployed. The paper that we're using wasn't strong enough, and our scale wouldn't go that high. We were getting a lot of broadheads that would go through, for the mechanicals anyways, that would max out the scale at over 3,000 grains, and then they would break through the paper without deploying. So it took a heck of a lot more for an expandable to actually deploy, which none of them did. And then it just shows you that that's how much energy you're going to lose when you use an expandable. I'm not against expandables, but just make sure you're using, bring your brain with you when you start using them. It takes a lot more energy for that broadhead to do its job. But getting back into the fixed blades here, some winners for the pressure test was the day 6. So it got 4th in the plunge test, and I think that's because the bleeders aren't as steep, and the iron wheel didn't perform that well in that test. However, it performed really well right up there with the day 6 in the pressure test, and I'm thinking that's probably the style of the bleeder. I'm just guessing there, but you're going to start seeing these nicer heads start pulling ahead the more we test them. Iron wheel is no exception. It will start shining here later in these tests. But the actual blade and the sharpness was really good. It was third best out of the test. Second place for was the Kudu for the edge, which kind of surprised me. And then you had third place, which would have been the Oscut 3-blade, which is the first time we've seen them kind of in the leaderboard. So right now, I'd kind of give it to day 6. I would give it to a few others. The Valkyrie, the iron wheels will start performing better, I believe, and then you're going to start seeing the Strickland Helix. It's kind of hanging out in no man's land for the plunge and the pressure test. It kind of was right in the middle almost. It was a 14 for the score on the plunge test, and then the pressure test was 12. But let's definitely start getting into some of these other heads. Let's get into like the expandables, and let's start getting into the replaceable blade category, and you're going to start seeing some overall winners there as well. So just looking at the expandables real quick, you had 8 different broadheads in the expandable category. You had Zeus, Schwacker, Nap Spitfire, Bloodsport, Gravedigger, Sever, Rage Hypodermic Plus P, G5 Dead Meats, and the Nap Kill Zones. Going into the sharpness test, you had a couple that it was kind of all over the board. You'd have one test really high, like the Zeus. It would test really high. And then On the variants, it would test really bad, or the nap kill zone where the average weight ranking was really good. They all came in exactly at 130, but the weight variance was bad because they were an average of 5 grains over. So kind of interesting there. But going into the sharpness with that, none of them deployed, not one, and then most of them were starting to bottom out our scale here. They were all pretty much over 1,000 unless the paper broke early. The G5 dead meat was under 1,000, but that was really, yeah. I mean, some of these were just, the G5 or the Bloodsport Gravedigger also was under 1,000, but none of them deployed. And then it took a lot more energy to deploy these things, and we didn't have enough. So next year we're going to have a tougher barrier for these basically broadheads to deploy. And later in the test, you'll see the G5 dead meat does not deploy in our penetration test when it should have. Absolutely should have. We were using a 700 grain arrow. It was the only one that did not deploy, and we shot it into as many layers as cardboard as it would go into. So, but that is, so you can see here, that is what we were looking at for the tests going into the accuracy and penetration tests. So let's just keep moving on here, and you can kind of pick through the list what winners you're seeing so far, where your broadhead's at, and yeah, we'll just keep going. Okay, for the replaceable blades, you had the Hardaway Dalton shining, the G5 Striker, and the Muzzy Trokar all shining in the consistency, the weight consistencies. The Quad Exodus, I was hoping was going to perform better. That's just one that I really like. But you start seeing the Quad Exodus really start performing better when you start testing the performance of the head. It was right up there towards the top on both the plunge test and the sharpness test, getting 11 points and 10 points. And another one that did really good was the G5 Striker. So it did good in both those tests. So it's towards the top 3. It got 10 points and 13 points in the plunge and then pressure test. And then another one that did good was actually the Wasp Boss, which I didn't expect that. And then the Rad Rival, it did actually pretty good in the plunge score. It got the highest. It got first in the plunge score, and then it kind of fell behind a couple broadheads. It got 4th place in the pressure test. And then you're going to see the Muzzy Trokar, which did really good in the first one. And then basically it was still towards the top. It was the 4th in the plunge test and 2nd or 3rd in the pressure test. So pretty cool results there. You're starting to see some leaders. The Quad Exodus is starting to gain back some momentum, and then the G5 Striker is probably the top performing head to that point in the test.
All right, today was it was kind of interesting because we have been at this for almost 9 hours. We've got a lot of data, and we got through the first leg of this, and that's consistency. So we checked weight, blade sharpness on the Pierce test, or what were we calling that?
Pressure test.
Huh?
Pressure test.
Pressure test, and then also on the
plunge test.
Plunge. So
I've never shot an arrow all day long, so you can see how happy it is in my face right now. So yeah, a lot of numbers, lots of things to go over. Garrett's jacked. I mean, he cannot wait to get home and just.
Yeah, I'll be working some percentages when we get home to figure out. Long story short, I got some homework to do after this, and we're not even close to being done yet. So I don't know if you can see how long and wide this spread Excel sheet is, but it's pretty.
Yeah, honestly, I think the best part about today was we got consistent results on the tests. So the tests were not flawed where we were getting way out of whack results. Everything seemed to be pretty relatively close, and I'm really excited about that. Now we get to go into our accuracy side of it. So get to actually shoot.
Yeah, so we haven't found a definitive winner by any means yet. We're just trying to get the baselines down to actually try and categorize what we're going to do. So, and I think this was a good baseline.
Yep.
So, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. We are going to stay at this thing. So, we don't know how many videos it's going to turn out to be. We're going to keep on running these tests, and as they work out and as they don't, we'll drop one here that doesn't make sense, or we'll add something on. So it could be, I don't know, 5 videos, 3 videos,
very easily
4. Who knows? When we're tired of crunching numbers. So thanks guys for watching, and don't miss our next arrow test, which will happen in a couple days.